This happened a little over 2 months ago. Since then, it's been circulating like wildfire among my co-workers, enough that someone finally told me, "Dude, just write it down. Post it online. Let other people decide if you're crazy." I'm a 44-year-old guy working for a municipal water district in Northern California. My job isn't glamorous, but it's honest. I handle everything related to water storage, transfer, and field diagnostics. Think old tanks, miles of pipe, and endless hills of vineyards and farmland. If a tank starts to leak, if something contaminates a well, or if some rancher swears his water pressure dropped, I'm the guy they send out. Most of the time, the job means driving out into the boonies, hiking up to rusty towers, and taking samples while swatting mosquitoes. And usually that's all it is, but not always. If you've never been through Mendocino or Lake County, try to picture this. Long stretches of barely maintained roads, ancient oaks twisted like they're trying to crawl away, and a kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being watched. Add in the fact that most of the infrastructure out here is left over from the 50s, massive steel tanks, concrete pump houses, miles of PVC piping snaking through thick woods. And it all makes for the kind of setting that gets under your skin, especially after dark. This particular call came in on a Friday afternoon, late. I was about to pack up when dispatch flagged a low-pressure report coming from a property way out past Bartlett Springs Road, near a cluster of old cabins that were mostly abandoned after the fires a few years back. The request didn't come from the property owner. It came from someone up the road who said they'd seen black water coming out of the hose. That got our attention. Technically, I could have logged it for Monday, but it was late September and I'd been itching to get a jump on my weekend. I figured if I knocked it out that evening, I could clock out early the next day and hit the coast with my girlfriend. So I loaded up my test kit, plugged the coordinates into the GPS, and hit the road. I remember the time exactly, 7:53 p.m. The sun had just dipped behind the western ridge, casting everything in deep purple shadows. The GPS took me off the highway, then onto smaller and smaller roads until I found myself crawling up a dirt path that barely qualified as a driveway. No signs, no streetlights, just rocks, trees, and darkness. Half a mile in, I passed a rusted gate that was hanging off one hinge and looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Beyond it, a long stretch of field was overgrown with tall grass. I slowed the truck. That's when I saw her. A girl, standing at the edge of the field. She couldn't have been more than 20, pale as a ghost, barefoot, and wearing a white nightgown that was so thin I could see her knees through it. She was holding something in her arms, a bundle wrapped in dark cloth. A baby? A cat? I couldn't tell. She stared as I passed, didn't move, didn't blink. Her mouth was slightly open, like she was trying to speak, but couldn't form the words. I rolled my window down, about to ask if she was okay, but something stopped me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Instead, I gave her a small nod and kept driving. By the time I reached the top of the hill, full darkness had set in. The air felt heavier, like I'd driven into a different pressure zone. I found the tanks easily. 2 massive steel drums surrounded by a chain-link fence, old but intact. There was a shed beside them, one of the older pump houses with a concrete foundation, and wood siding faded to gray. I parked, grabbed my kit, and climbed out. No lights, no sounds, no wind. Even the insects were quiet. I ran my tests quickly, trying not to think about the girl. But as I walked around to inspect the pipes near the shed, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Someone was inside the building. I froze. There was no power connected to the shed, but a faint orange glow flickered through the slats. Candlelight, maybe. The door was slightly ajar. I crept closer, slow and silent, until I could hear something. Whispering. At first I thought it was one person, but then I realized it was many. Dozens of voices whispering in unison, like a low chant. I caught a few words, but none of them made sense. They weren't in English, weren't in any language I recognized. My skin broke out in goosebumps, and every instinct I had screamed at me to leave. I backed away, slowly, and that's when the door creaked open. There was no one there. The whispers stopped instantly. The candle blew out. Then I heard it. From somewhere beneath the shed, from deep underground, came the unmistakable sound of something massive shifting. Like rock grinding against rock, or something waking up. I turned and ran to my truck, threw my gear in the passenger seat, slammed the door, and jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine sputtered, then died. I tried again. Nothing. Then I saw them. Figures in the field, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all barefoot, all pale, all wearing white. They emerged from the woods, from behind the tanks, from the edges of the shed. They didn't speak. They didn't move quickly. They just gathered, forming a wide semicircle around my truck, and every single one of them was staring at me. I locked the doors. Suddenly, the girl from earlier appeared. She stepped forward from the crowd, still clutching that bundle, and walked slowly toward the driver's side window. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I rolled it down just a crack. She stopped inches away. Her eyes were glassy and black, like there was no soul behind them. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Before I could reply, the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. I felt those. This was something different, rhythmic, deliberate, like something alive was moving beneath us. The crowd turned in unison and looked back toward the pump house. Then they ran, not away, toward it. I watched in stunned silence as they surged through the broken fence and into the shed, vanishing one after another into the darkness inside. Some crawled, some leapt, some dragged themselves like their limbs didn't work properly. One man laughed hysterically the entire time, blood pouring from his mouth. Within seconds, they were all gone, except the girl. She stood by my truck, eyes locked on mine, and said one more thing. "It's hungry now." Then she disappeared into the trees. The engine finally roared to life. I threw it into reverse, peeled out, and didn't stop until I hit the highway, tires screeching and heart in my throat. I called dispatch as soon as I had a signal. Told them there was something seriously wrong with the tanks out on Bartlett Hill. They promised to look into it. I followed up a week later. No one had found anything. The shed was empty. The tanks were fine. No signs of recent activity. The land, according to the county, had been abandoned for 10 years. I haven't been back since, and I never will.